So.
Okay, now we're ready.
Do we have anybody online? Jeff's here? Okay. Um. Is that it? Those two, Marla Butts and Jeff?
I think so.
Okay, because Dwight might come in on Zoom if he can, he has a meeting, so he might be able to come in.
No, it says there's 4.
Okay,
You want me to do what? Sure.
Jeff, can you hear us? Mr. Marcotte? Can anybody that's on Zoom hear us?
Marla Butt speaking, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So we're just,
He says, yes, you can now.
okay,
Why are you not telling us that?
okay, well, I'll call the meeting to order at 7:31, it looks like up there. We have a roll call. Start with you, Mr. Young.
Mark Blackmore, Joseph Adeletta, Sid Lodgy,
Joe Belulik.
And me, David Morse. Jeff, are you gonna call her in? Text in? Okay, well, we'll continue on. I don't think there's any alternatives here. I think we're all full members. So we're gonna have to go with what we have. I guess we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance next.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
I don't have much of a chair report other than to thank everybody that's here for being here and everybody for the work that they do. Jeff, do you want to chime in here? No? Pete, Yeah.
Got a microphone issue, Warren Thomas.
what,
Hello.
microphone issue?
Doesn't show up over here.
But Marlo was.
Marla said you.
Marla could hear us.
And the owl says it's on.
Stevie, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
I had to dial in, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I
So,
can see it on my computer, I just can't get the audio to work, and now I get feedback, so I gotta turn my computer down, so. Sorry.
Well, we did the roll call. I don't know if you heard that. Pledge allegiance.
I
and now-
did. I said I was present.
Okay. So now I'm just, I'm at the chair's report and I just wanted to see if you had anything to say.
Well, I do, and I appreciate having the floor. I wanted to do this way back on September 19th, but the meeting got canceled out from under me that I wasn't real happy about, but sometimes things happen like that. So I want to say, everybody knows that I moved to Florida with my family. It's 79 degrees currently. It has cooled off a bit. Probably have to put a sweater on tomorrow when it's 59 degrees in the morning. So, but it's been a real pleasure serving the town and working with current and past commissioners. I feel as though with the help from other commissioners, you know, I've left I was gonna say our town, but, I've left Woodstock because unfortunately it isn't my town anymore, but it is fortunate. I left it a better place than I found it anyways, and I enjoyed my time with the commission, and I'll even go as far as saying it was fun. I think we had a good bunch, and I'm very happy here with my wife and kids, and I wanted to show everybody a picture, but I can't figure out how to make the video work either, but so I'll tell you about it. My wife had, actually, I'll text it to you, David, and then you can see it, and everybody can see it. So nobody cares, but my wife yesterday had the pleasure of having lunch with Guy Fieri. And I don't know if everybody knows who Guy Fieri is, but he donated time and food to the first responders locally there where my wife works, and they're still dealing with aftermath of 2 hurricanes. So he came and donated lunch and his time and took pictures and was gracious with everybody, and my wife got to meet him, but I didn't get to meet him. So and the last thing I'm gonna say is well, I'm going to formally resign on Monday. I'll let the town clerk know that I'm going to resign, and I'd just like to remind everybody that there are 127 days until spring, and thank you, everybody.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks for telling us how many days till spring. That's a sign of hope. It's less than 180. Anyway, thank you very much for your work on the board and filling in for chair after Jeff Gordon left, and we really appreciate the work you did here.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is the end of the chair's report. We'll go on to any citizens' comments having to do with stuff other than we're going to discuss today. Hearing none.
Oh,
no,
yes. Marla Butt speaking. I do have some
Okay.
comments.
Okay, go ahead, Carla.
It's Marla.
Marla, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm a member of the Woodstock Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. And as you're probably aware, that the Inland Wetlands Agency has been working on comments to the draft plan of conservation and development. What might be helpful to you is if you listen to the YouTube recordings from October 7th, starting at hour 2 and 16 minutes. For about 10 minutes, we had a discussion. That was on October 7th. And then again on November 4th, if you go and listen from the beginning of hour 2 to minute 21 to almost the end of the meeting, you might find some useful information in there. On the state's draft plan of conservation and development, they identified 5 visions. One of those visions is stewardship of natural resources. And so what I'm focusing on, as well as some of the other commission members, agency members, are looking at what the natural resources are, what kinds of maps are required. We've identified some deficiencies in the maps. And we're going to try to come up with a list of maps that we think that the POCD should have. My direction is going to be focusing on climate resiliency as part of the stewardship of natural resources. So it may cover more than just some wetlands, but we just wanted to give you that. I just wanted to make sure you had that heads up. I believe we don't get to talk to you until in December. I think our responsibilities are due back to you. We have our next meeting on December 2nd, and I expect that we'll be talking about it again at that time, and hopefully we'll be able to get some comments back into you and Delia before the end of the year. And So that's the only reason I attended this meeting, is just to give you that kind of heads up and suggest you listen to those YouTube recordings.
Just one, on the October 7th one, what was the time?
The second hour is 16 minutes in. And it only goes for 10 minutes.
Is that the
The-
7th or the 4th?
That's on this October 7th.
Okay,
And then November 4th was quite a long discussion, and that starts at hour 2, 21 minutes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to your reports to add. And
Thank
feel
you.
free to join any of these meetings that this is coming up in
Thank
person.
you.
If you can make it, that'd be great. We'd appreciate it. We appreciate your work.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
All the meetings are open to the public and people are invited to attend any and all the meetings.
Thank you. Christine, you had something?
Yes, I'm just Christine Lessig and I'm on the Commission of Aging. And it's a relatively new commission in town, and we just wanted to let all the committees know we exist. And clearly we have a need for senior and housing. We just drafted a survey on all different issues to assess the needs of our aging population in Woodstock. So we don't have data, but as soon as we do have some data, we will share it with you, and just keep us informed as you go through housing plans and projects, as you explore the needs in town.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If you want to give me your email afterwards, then I can make sure you get the other agendas for the other meetings.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay. Meeting minutes, we have meeting minutes from the October 7th meeting. We need a,
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
we have a second, any discussion? Give you a minute to go through them. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I wasn't here.
Joe will abstain. Okay, so now that's done. Now we'll turn it over to Delia for our P O C D update discussion.
You're just taking a moment. Looks different up there. So tonight we wanted to focus on housing. So I have this little exercise for you, and folks online, once we get started, I'll give you a scenario and you can try to participate. Do you want to join the table?
Yeah.
So everybody's gonna get a character of the person who might live in Woodstock. And your job is to go through the Sharper's Guides. Or you can access the information that you can find on your phone on the internet. And see if you can find housing and a job for these people.
Ended.
So for the folks that are online, I don't believe the chat function works on the way our Zoom is set up. But for Dottie, I'd like to give you, your character will be a couple just married. One of them is still in college full-time. One of them has a Bachelor of Science degree. And Jeff, you're character is a couple, 37 and 42 years old, two high school kids. One of the adults has a bachelor's degree and one has a high school diploma. So the idea is that you look for housing and a job. And preferably, we're gonna see whether we can find it in this region and maybe in Woodstock. So I handed out like 3 or 4 different shopper's guides to each table. And so you can also access whatever you can find on your phone for housing or jobs in this area. Just the shopper's guides are pretty local, so I thought that would be pretty handy to use, but any source that you can find right now would be fine. They'll give you a few minutes. And feel free to look through as many of the shopper's guides as you can. There's at least 4 on each table. And we're gonna pretend they're all current and valid for now. If anybody finishes early, I have 1 more character left.
Excuse me, Adelia, did you see my chat message? This is Dottie.
No, I didn't. I'll see if I can see that.
Oh, that's okay. I'll just tell you, my audio is breaking up here. I can hardly hear a lot what's being said, so I'm not going to participate, but I'll still remain because I can hear some. So I'll still hang in. Thank you.
Okay.
I tell her nobody's talking.
Oh, Dottie, just so you know, we haven't been doing a lot of talking. Everybody's looking through their shopper's guides or looking on their phone to do the task. I'm sorry, the screen is not showing what I'm showing on my screen. So 1 moment, I'll see if I can fix that. Zoom is driving me crazy right now. Apologize for the folks that are online. We're not seeing the same thing on my screen. Here's what our computers are showing. This is So how are we doing? We ready to talk about what you found?
All the department was already taken.
Well, I don't know what's wrong with the screen here. It's not working. There we go. This seems to be right. So who wants to go first? Joe, would you like to go first?
Sure, I had a high school graduate, 19 years old. Assuming, to be looking for a job in housing. This shopper's guide, reading the current issue. Lots of ads for help wanted, and everywhere from restaurants to machining to welding to inventory. So it seemed like a lot of opportunities available in the Concord, Killingly, Putnam area.
Do they have entry level jobs?
Some do, some will need a skill, but most of them particularly the larger companies like fiber optics, DRW, Spiral, tend to take entry level people, train them. The housing was a little more challenging. In this particular issue of the shopper's guide only found a few houses for sale, probably well outside the range of a 19-year-old. There was a mobile home, but that was in North Wyndham, but that was at 95,000 for a mobile home. And then for rental, the only one I found was a carriage house in Pomfret, $2,200 a month. Plus first and last month. So,
Six of their friends want to join together.
yeah, well, that happens a lot. Yeah, you get 3 or 4 people renting a place to help cover it. So I didn't see anything for Woodstock, obviously, but
But, well, everyone else is talking, you can look at a different one if you want, and see if you can find some more options
to lead to what?
for housing, since you found several job options, but you struggled to find a housing option.
Yeah.
Is anybody else ready to go next?
I'll go next. I had a single parent, 27-year-old associate degree with 2 kids, 1 and 5. I went to Zillow and found 2 rentals in town, in Woodstock. One was a 2-bedroom, which is kind of the bare minimum with 2 kids, for $2,000. And 2 others, and another one, maybe I only found 2, and one was 2,000, that was over Woodstock Valley. And Pinecrest Rentals, I'm not sure exactly where that is, but that was 2,150, 2 beds, 2 baths, so that's the bare minimum for, somebody with 2 kids. It doesn't say male or female, but I found a few, like Luce is hiring, Donahue, kind of. And the price range that, Mackey's was hiring, but they're 17 or 15 to 18 administration assistant, like,
I mean,
Wait.
$15, $18 an hour,
yeah. Which is not,
not gonna afford that.
not gonna be afford the house. I looked in the kind of the Wyndham County area for jobs, because assuming you're gonna have to have a car to live here. Personal care assistant is $16, receptionist down in Plainfield is 15 to 20. So, I assume they have an associate's degree. I don't know if they're male or female. I don't know if they could be trained to work at one of the more industrial jobs that are available. I don't know where the price cutoff, what the salary ranges for that. I know where I work part-time, help them out. They're looking for like probably be a younger guy, a younger person that can run a chainsaw all day. And they're in that 17 to 18, $20 an hour. So. Most of the places that are hiring are offering benefits and stuff, so you might be able to get some health care, which would be great. That's another cost that comes off. So, I mean, it's just for a single parent with just an associate's degree, it's gonna be a tough road to hoe to find a place in Woodstock to live. You're not gonna be able to afford to live in Woodstock.
Right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I got,
Who's your character?
college student, 21 years old, working part-time, so that working part-time or?
Well, I think it's college student and they're working part-time, so they're doing both at the same time.
So there was, housing, there was a room rent, it's $210 a week. Which might appeal to a college student. And then there was an apartment for $1,100 a week.
You mean a month, I hope?
What's that?
You mean a month, I hope? It's probably not 1,100 a week. That would be an awfully nice apartment.
No, it's $1,100 a month.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then the jobs, the art, they're looking for full and part-time. shell concrete, but there's probably full-time fiber optics and Putnam Public School.
Do you think they could afford that?
It is.
Do you think they could afford that housing with those jobs? Considering if they have, going to college, they'll have college expenses. They're not always supported by parents, though.
Yeah.
I wasn't. Anybody else? Yeah,
So I've got a retired couple, 70 and 80 years old. Are they looking for work, or they are retired? So there was one that was a caretaker / companion. If they were looking to do something, again, you know, CDL. Don't know if they've still got a CDL at 70 years old and want to be driving. Welders, probably not. If they're looking for if they're retired. Housing. What would be the most important would be room for rent, Putnam for 700 a month. And that's a walking distance to all amenities.
but would a couple want to rent a room and someone else?
That's, they have any other choices or not.
Yeah,
Just wanted to add to his that if they were a senior looking for senior housing with the housing, it's a 3-year wait list and pretty much it's been frozen for a year.
But that's the thing in here, there's no.
Yeah.
Didn't see anything for senior
Putnam-
housing
Putnam Woodstock.
available in here.
Yeah, Housing Authority.
anybody else ready to go next? Joe?
Yeah, I had a single adult with a bachelor's, 35 years old, but with significant physical limitations. And I saw a couple jobs that he could apply, or she could apply for. Technical services librarian in the town of Putnam, part-time. And then the ARC in Eastern Connecticut. As far as housing goes, I looked at the same apartments that those guys did, you know, anywhere from $1,100 to $1,600.
And looking at that information, we don't know if they're accessible. Many apartments are gonna
Correct.
be not
Correct,
that
they did
accessible.
say.
Anybody else ready to go next?
Hi, Noreen Stelling. So I had, it said couple 53 and 68 planning for retirement, which suggests they're still working. And then adult child and grandchild live with them. No indication of skills or college degree or whatever, but suggests that maybe either the adult child is not very well off already, or they wouldn't live with them, or else there's problems for the couple. But I didn't see any, I saw a couple of, a townhouse for rent, 2-bedroom, which would be kind of the minimum for 4 people with those relationships, and a 3-bedroom house for rent, but there wasn't any, it was like all for information, so probably they're not cheap, not in Woodstock, one in Brooklyn, I don't remember. Oh, the other one is at Alexander's Lake. And then a $669,000 3-bedroom house in Concord, but there's no indication about whether the couple already has equity and could afford it, but that's not cheap. The jobs, there weren't a lot of jobs actually, but I give a fair number of them required skills, and it's not clear from this information whether the people would be like able to be a skilled carpenter, for example, or a skilled machinist. There were some, or a hairstylist. You mean you need to have a license for that? You can't just like go cut somebody's hair. There was somebody that wanted Girls and Tools wanted an on-site project manager. Again, you need experience for that. That's not something you just do. There were some office staff positions, including for the town of Thompson and the town of Woodstock building office assistant. I'm assuming that that's just kind of clerical, but I don't really know. So there were some kind of possibly entry level. There was one Hardline Heat in Southbridge said they wanted all experience level. I have no idea whether that's a con or not. Pardon?
That's true.
Look, I mean, it did sound kind of a little whirly there, actually, but I don't know. But maybe it's for real. I don't know. But anyway, so it seemed like a mixed bag. Certainly the housing will be extremely difficult. As everybody else has. Noted.
Who else is left to go? Sid, Christine, are you guys ready?
You want to go first? So I had a single male, empty nester, 55 years old, high school graduate. Surprisingly, I found quite a few apartments, a couple here in Woodstock, Harrisville Avenue. Both 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. 1 bedroom was about $1,400 a month. 2 bedroom was about $1,550 a month. And then it expanded out to probably down to Willimantic, over the state line into Massachusetts, 1 or 2 into Rhode Island. Jobs, on the other hand, I really didn't see many. Cutting and splitting wood, minimum age 16. Mature, experienced woman to be a companion to an elderly lady. Third, a company called Hardline Heat Treating. I'm not really sure what they do, people describe. Then a direct support professional for the art.
And so do we think any of these people could live in Woodstock and find a job in Woodstock? Oh, I'm sorry, Christine didn't go.
No, it's okay. Go on with discussion.
So would they have to, could they live in town but work somewhere else? Or would they have to both live and work outside of town?
Well, my retired couple was 70 and 80 years old, we had them living there, so. But depends on your prior, do they already own their house and that's all set? Do they have a retired pension? Or do they have social security? No. They're retired with absolutely no income, don't own anything. Could be in trouble.
Well, the lowest house I see for sale on one of these was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath for $225,000.
What town, doesn't say what town it's
Oh, it's
in?
in Woodstock.
Oh.
And even a condo down on Dug Hill Road is $240, which seems like really high price for
1 bedroom, or 2 bedroom.
2-bedroom, 1 bath. On the Fawn Ridge on Dug Hill Road. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's down the road from me, so that's like. But it's only 832 square feet for 240,000. Seems like a lot of money for a condo. But everything else is, 265 for 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And that's on the lake. And then you just throw over 300,000. There's not even many in that range. And oftentimes you're buying a house for that little, it needs work.
Yeah,
What condos are on the association fees?
Yeah.
so the next part of the challenge is life happens, so we're gonna see what happens to our characters. And then how do you adjust to that? Who's your character?
Couple. Yeah, couple.
Who's your character? So housing is not our only expense. And so sometimes something happens and that can significantly change your circumstances. So you want to share what your scenario is and how you think it would affect your character? Sure.
All right, so
Who's your character and what's your?
my character is a 19-year-old high school graduate. And apparently he was living in a house that burns down with everything in it. Which is unfortunate but not terribly uncommon, and it would certainly change your circumstances. Don't know if he has a job or a house anyway. A lot of agencies would certainly be available to help, Red Cross, churches. places
For the
like
short
that.
term, though,
For the
is
short
it gonna?
term, yeah.
And since it was kind of hard for you to find housing for him, when the housing burns down, you have one less option.
True. But I think like a 19-year-old, if he's, would be, and you suggested it, probably trying to find a place with roommates to help offset the expenses of rent and utilities. So
I got people with a house, they just are.
okay.
So Mark, what's your character and yours,
I've got the retired 70,
and then what happened?
sorry, couple, so their car was totaled in an accident. And the injury takes 6 months to heal, no work. So that's so a good place for Joe's person to live.
Yeah.
He's in a car in front of people.
Tim?
This is kind of odd, but the college student, 21 years old, working part-time, just had a stroke. And continues to live alone, posing a significant challenge. So that would be certainly a knock on the knees there.
A friend of mine's 19-year-old brother just last week, they think had a stroke.
We have football players that go into
Yeah.
that, so. Just it can happen. So, yeah, that certainly would pose a significant challenge for an individual. Try to get a job,
Trying to finish school.
finish school. It's and now there's an insurance risk and. Yeah, yeah, a lot of challenges.
David, you want to go next?
Sure. I had a single parent with 2 kids, 1 and 5. My dilemma was that childcare closes down, and there's a very long wait list for all providers within 30 minutes commute. So that's hopefully the 5-year-old is in full-time kindergarten, so that would help with that issue. But you have a 1-year-old that needs childcare, and there's a wait, and that's just a disaster.
Childcare is expensive as it is, but then when you can't find it,
But then it doesn't matter if you have a job or not, because you can't work with a 1-year-old. So it just, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter where you live, that's a disaster. I mean, even if your housing is cheap and available and you have a job, you don't have childcare. That's not gonna work. So just makes me glad we don't have to get some child.
it's good. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, mine was a single adult, empty nester, 55 years old, high school graduate. Loved one requires significant care daily. So that could mean a bunch of things. One is that the caregiver's living situation may need to change to have that loved one move in with him or her. Maybe moving from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, paying the additional rent. It also mean that the 55-year-old might have to get a second job. He's having in-home care for his loved one, or maybe have to go from full-time to part-time to provide that care for herself.
Maybe they'll have to pay for renovations to their house to make it more accessible.
Yeah, that could happen as well. Or multiple of those things.
Are you guys ready?
I had a young couple with 3 children and they just have another child on the way and they're all. There's only one in school, they're all young. And they don't have a job, they want to start their own business, so. There's very limited housing for that, for enough bedrooms with another child. Impossible. And to start their own business without education, it would only be service jobs, childcare, or running a little restaurant or a gas station, there's
Yeah.
just not enough income.
What do you have?
53 and 60-year-old planning for retirement, living with adult child and grandchild. The change is that resident doesn't say which one, since there's presumably 3 people here who are working. Resident loses his job in a certain job market, so obviously that would be a problem, since they clearly wouldn't all be living together if the adult child and grandchild were self-sufficient or something. But I'm not clear who lost the job, but whoever did, probably it's not a good situation.
I'd like to just add, in Woodstock, I worked at early voting. So many young adults up to 30 years old are living with their families. They've all, I couldn't believe it, and they kept talking about it, and they just weren't expecting me back in Woodstock, but because they just can't afford, they're working, but they can't afford housing and pay their loans, and I was surprised the numbers, and they just,
But
so
they're
that's
not,
interesting.
but they're not working in Woodstock
I
necessarily.
don't
They're
know
just
where they're
living,
working, but
living here.
they can't afford a place.
Joe?
And single adult, 35 years old, with significant physical limitations who gets a serious illness and results in a lot of significant medical expenses. So says probably the person didn't have a good medical at work. So they're gonna have to go on some kind of payment system to the hospital and doctors.
So as if life wasn't challenging enough, then something like that happens. So what happens? Do they have to move? Do they have to hopefully find a new job? What would happen to you if that happened those things happened in your life? What would happen? And so for the purpose of this exercise and for this commission, we're thinking of housing. So in terms of affordability, sometimes when we have these discussions, and I have them in other towns, and I go to workshops all the time about housing, we sometimes hear judgments about people, about how if they would get a job or if they would get a degree or something. But it's not our job to judge what choices they've made or what circumstances they have, but I think the commission could think about what housing options are in Woodstock and whether you want to consider making changes to allow for new housing options. So here's another kind of scenarios of things that can happen, maybe not so drastically bad, but your seniors downsizing but have no smaller or more suitable options to move into. If that's the case in Woodstock, does it mean they have to move out of town? Do you have empty nesters who no longer need a large home that is expensive and time consuming to maintain? Do they have other options? Can they buy something that's maybe more affordable and doesn't need so much time consuming maintenance? Maybe more suitable to their needs now that they don't need such a big house, or young adults moving into their first home as an adult. And from that statement, we don't know if they're just out of high school or if they're out of college, but their first independent home, are newly single adults or single parents, are people who experience life-altering health challenges, such as an accident or an illness. Sometimes that is expensive, or it affects your physical mobility and other health challenges that can be expensive. And if that money is an expense, it's going to take away from what you have available to pay for housing. And people facing financial challenges such as a job loss, or if something happens to their car, As we know, living around here, you need a car to get to the job and to do all the other things. And so perhaps a little bit less serious, but we're gonna move on to talking about how residential development in Woodstock has changed. And if you've been to previous meetings, I've shown this chart, and it's not showing up over there. There is a chart on my computer that's not showing up on the screen. I don't know why. I will stop sharing and redo it. Maybe that'll work. It's not what's showing up on these laptops. I don't know why it's not showing up. Jeff, would you mind if I stop sharing so that everyone can see the other slides? I don't want to leave you out of it, but I can't get what's showing on our laptops and your screen to show up on the other screen. Wait a minute, sorry, wait a minute. There we go. At least for the time being, we're all looking at the same thing. So this chart I've shown before, each of the towns in the NECOG region are on along the bottom. And then the line, the curvy lines are different time periods, like the red is the 1990s. That's this line here. You can match that color as you go along. The pinkish one is the 2000s, 2010, and then what we have so far of the 2020s. And of course, as we get farther through this decade, that number would go up, those numbers would go up. But that compares how many houses by the town for each of those time periods. And we are supposed to be moving down. Gotta love technology. It works so
this-
well at my office.
Are these single family houses? Is this what this represents?
Yes. There's in Woodstock, there's been only 1 2-family built in the 18 years since I've worked for the town. Actually, I'm not even sure if it's been built yet. It's been approved, but I don't know if it's been built.
Right, but you have all the towns, presumably like, I don't know, Killingly or Putnam.
Well, the census data that I was able to access doesn't have how many of those
Units.
other kinds of houses,
I see.
at least
Okay.
didn't have accessible to me. I don't know why the screen isn't working. It usually works.
So, Woodstock, the upper number 491, is that purplish from the 2000s? Or is that the red from the 1990s?
This is the pink.
Yeah.
This is the 2010s, I think.
Oh, okay,
And this is the reddish. I think this is the
1990s,
1990s reddish color,
okay,
and then this would be the raspberry pink, and then the latest one. I think this is the pinkish,
Is it 2000?
yeah,
And those are the number of single family houses built during that decade period?
Yeah.
Okay.
and of course, we haven't finished the last decade, so that's why it looks so low.
91 single family houses were built in the one of those decades.
Yeah,
In 2000?
Wow. One decade. Yeah.
So in those 2 decades, 1990s and the 2000s, there's been 888 or so. That about 900 houses.
and again, I don't know why the screen is not moving. Because on my screen, it is moving. We've never had this problem before.
Maybe a restart would help, or you don't want to take
I'm gonna
that
mess up
chance.
the recording.
Oh, it seems like no matter what town you look at, there's a heck of a lot of houses built in the 1990s and 2000s. Very few in the 2 decades or the decade and a half since.
Yeah, we were growing so fast, we had a feasibility study at the schools when I was on the school board. The numbers, it was projected we were gonna outgrow our schools, and then 1 year later, the projection went way down.
And now it's still declining. The whole area, population, school kid population is declining.
Regionally,
Well, I apologize, I don't know what's wrong with the screen, I don't know why it's not showing
Forecast.
what it's supposed to be showing.
Local semi-town students on a
Yeah.
decline.
The next screen on your.
the local ones.
Yeah.
And
What
you
you
want to plug it, and
I mean,
we plug it in.
4 to 8 years. Because you have all the records of kids studying. They've never been.
I already unplugged it from here.
Yeah,
Is that all able to predict like the foreign students, what they're?
That kind of. then
I
you-
can move this slide up and
for our
down,
district, you only have some
and it's
schools.
not moving on this slide, and it's not moving on that one.
Yeah.
Well, I have a slide that I have shown in the past, which doesn't help anyone who didn't attend another meeting, but it's a chart that shows how many houses have been built in Woodstock each year. For those timeframes, just looking at Woodstock alone, but I can't get it to work on the screen. I don't know why.
Well, I would suspect that this decade's gonna be pretty low, because we had 2, 3 years of COVID. And now we've got inflation. And, the number of units being built this decade, I think is gonna be pretty low.
I'm gonna close my, not the meeting, but I'm gonna close the file, and maybe when I reopen it, it would help.
See how fast it comes.
I had the whole presentation, and then I had to fix it today because a lot of computer problems happened, so I didn't know it was gonna continue. Okay, so should be a little clearer than that. Let me see if I can fix that part.
There you go.
So this is just Woodstock, and it's every year from 1990 to 2023.
And those are built or approved? Probably built.
Building permits are issued for them. I don't think they track the number of COs, but the building official has to report to the state how many houses they've approved every year.
So even in years when the mortgage rates were very low.
And we still had some houses during COVID that were issued permits. Because things didn't completely stop in the building industry. So, if you were, for the commission anyway, if you recall back to the affordable housing plan, and I had some data from that I will be updating, and I tried to do it this week, but I had some computer problems. But, so we're gonna think about what kind of changes do we expect to happen? And this is from the affordable housing plan, and it shows your change in population, which age groups are increasing or decreasing. From 2010 to 2019, I'm gonna be getting as up to date as possible. I have access to the 2023 community survey, the American Community Survey. I just wasn't able to put it together for this week because of the computer problems. But here's the between 2010 and 2019 for Woodstock, the household composition by age. So the top two are the 2010s and the bottom two are the 2019s. And so if you can see renter and owner comparison. I don't want to go through the slides too quickly, so I'll give you another minute to look at it.
And we can just kind of summarize that for us, like, is there one or two outstanding trends that are really surprising or expected?
Compare 2010 renter in the age group of 25 to 34, you had 64. In 2019, you have 220.
Yeah,
That's
that's a big change.
drastically different. And
So did that mean a lot more rental units became available? In 2019?
well, these are estimates from the American Community Survey, so it's
Yeah.
not perfect. They are based on estimates.
Okay.
So I think that's a little interesting because we don't have a lot of rentals unless people are they were renting their homes, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the data about that. But, let's see. The 35 to 44, you compare 2010 to 2019, that's a significant difference. Between owners. And then, so they're both owners in 2010 and 2019, but you're comparing this number of owners to that number, you're a lot fewer owners here in that age group.
We're just looking at your renters, like you said, how that the age group is 25 to 34 went way up from 2010 to 2019. But yet when you look over at the 45 to 54, we went from 86 down to 10. You know, in 2010, you had 86 renters, with the 45 to 54 range. 2019 was only 10. Then went to 35 to 9. 26 to 17, so those numbers are all dropping.
Yeah,
From
but
your 85 plus, we had 60 renting in 2010 and only 11.
that's what marked that yellow group. You noted it dropped significantly between the two time periods. The owners did too, a little bit. But to me, that would say there's less of them. There's not just that there were switching from rent to own, because they both went down.
Right, I was just looking, not comparing the rent to own, just comparing the rentings.
Yeah, yeah,
Renters,
Yeah.
because like we say, just in the age range of 25 to 34, there was a significant increase
right.
for the two time periods. But all of the older ages,
Right,
it's a significant
in
decrease.
renting, but the 2010 and 2019 owners for that age group, there's not that much
Increase.
change.
Yeah.
Is there? I can't read the numbers.
Well, the next slide might, doesn't have household information, but it has population change. And I'm sorry, that's a different chart. This one shows comparing the renter in occupied units. So it shows you which one's decreasing and which one's increasing. So from 2010 to 2019, your age group of 45 to 84, I'm sorry, to 85 plus decreased a lot.
Under renters.
Yeah, under renters. And then it's kind of back and forth on the owners. This is your household size comparing Connecticut with Windham County and Woodstock. You have 1 person, 2, 3, and 4 person households.
What surprised me about this last time was the number, in my mind, the high number of one-person households. A lot of them. Well,
That's
again,
true
that
around
just
the
surprised
state.
me.
There's a lot more single person households these days.
Yeah.
So in Woodstock in
Seniors.
2010, you had 22.7, and now in 2019 you had 24.4. So it's going up. Not a huge amount, but your two person households in 2010 was 30, and now it's 42. Or was in 2019. That's a huge jump. But your 4 person households are going down 30.3 to 18.6. And your 3 person is changing a little bit, going down a little bit. That says 14.
It's kind of consistent from Woodstock to the county to the state. That drop in 4-person households.
In the 2 person or 3 person, they could be roommates, right? They don't have to be coupled.
Yeah, I don't think that this is, it's about
Families.
that sort of thing. It's
individuals.
just the number of people.
Yeah.
There's other tables that you can look at that will tell you whether they're married or related or whatever. There's mind-boggling amount of tables in the census.
Yeah.
This one's showing you the number of bedrooms. So now, between Woodstock, Windham County, and Connecticut. So we have, as we saw, a lot more falling size of households. We're increasing number of smaller households, but we have a lot of large, at least 3-bedroom houses.
And Woodstock has 27% seniors in our town, and that's really high as we looked at the data throughout the state of Connecticut. We're on the high end.
Right. So some of the key issues, we have a shifting household size and composition. We have a rising cost of homeownership. And part of that has to do with the increased size of the home over the years. We have
I'm sorry, did you say increase or decrease?
this household, the size of the house itself has gotten bigger.
Oh, yeah.
The number of people is going down, but the house itself, and looking at much longer time frame, has gotten really big. And then we have employment fluctuations and stagnant income, so that affects how much of a house you can afford. The funny thing about zoning is zoning does not make the development happen. Like zoning, the fact that you have zoning doesn't make anything happen. It's the people who get the permits who do the building. So zoning can allow something to happen if it's in compliance. And if it happens when it's not in compliance, then it's in violation. So the regulations can direct development, and we saw that happen when, for many years, Woodstock's regulations required that a lot be designed for 4-bedroom houses. And we have a lot of 4-bedroom houses. So when that was in the regulation, you had to design your lot and your subdivision to fit a 4-bedroom, and that has a lot to do with your septic system size and your soils. So certain types of soils, your septic system would have to be very long to manage the effluent coming out of the 4-bedroom household. But when it got approved, and then when someone went to build the house, you weren't mandated to build the 4-bedroom house. But sometimes the builder who did the subdivision may not have the buyer yet, who just builds the house. They often would build the 4-bedroom house and then they try to find the buyer. And that happened a lot. So it's not necessarily a problem, but I think our job now is to recognize that the housing needs are changing. So here's it showing a little diagram that's showing you over time, the size of the house is like inversely relational to the size of the number of people in the family. So we have huge housing for very few people compared to what we had many years ago.
So, I'm sorry, can you just read off those years? I can't, the 19,
1790 is over here.
Oh, 17.
1790 at 831 square feet, 1850 at 888 square feet, 1910 at 945, 1970 at 1500 square feet, and 2019 at 2,496 square feet. And you can see now we have our, what, 2.5 people per family or even less by now. So we have big houses that are being built, but many more households need a smaller house. And it has a lot to do with what they can afford. Maybe they would like a big house for various reasons, or maybe they already have a big house, but maybe they can't afford it anymore. Or if they have to buy a new house, they can't afford one of the existing big homes. So the regulations that allow for a variety of options would meet more in the needs of more residents. How might Woodstock respond to those housing demand changes? I wrote the housing regulation updates, a guide for vibrant communities, as part of my job at NECOG. We wrote a SEDS, it's a comprehensive economic development strategy, and one of the products that came out of that was this guide, and I'm going to be sharing it with all of our towns, and we're hoping that the planning and zoning commissions will read it and consider the recommendations. I have already emailed you links to it. And we're out of ink at the office, but when we get some ink, if you'd like a paper copy, you can let me know and I can print some. But it is available on the website, and I can also email it out again. So a place to start would be to consider allowing housing types that would be compatible in Woodstock beyond the single family homes and the accessory apartments that we already allow. And of course, what you would consider allowing does have a lot to do with the infrastructure and the limitations of septic systems that we currently have. But you could consider duplexes, triplex, 4-family, and condominiums. And we would do that, if you chose to do that, would be through a text amendment. That's how you change the zoning regulations. So, and to just remind everybody that zoning is about the use, like the residential versus commercial, and where you do that use, like where in town and where on the lot. And so when I'm suggesting the duplex, triplex, 4-family, and condominiums, and you might say, well, how do we know that would be compatible? I'm saying it's because they're already here. These are the housing types that we looked at for the affordable housing plan. This is according to the assessor from 2022. These are how many housing units you have in Woodstock on how many properties. The ones in yellow are the ones that I'm suggesting that you consider allowing. So the current regulations don't allow for a 2-family or anything greater than that unless you do a special permit for multifamily housing, and the standards for multifamily are the reason why we haven't seen any multifamily applications. They're require 10 acres and huge setbacks, some of the setbacks don't even make any sense. As I've mentioned in previous meeting where you have a setback from house, and instead of going to the boundary line, you have a setback from the house to the house on the next lot, which doesn't make any sense because the boundary line is somewhere in the middle. And that house only had to be 20 feet away from their boundary line, but this house has to now measure to that house. But what if that house wasn't built yet? And if you have your multifamily house, according to the setback, because it also has a setback to the side boundary line, in addition to that one that doesn't make any sense. And if they were in compliance, but then that wants, the other person, the neighbor wants to build their house in compliance, now they're not in compliance anymore. Because your separation from your multifamily to the next house on the next lot is something that doesn't make any sense.
Looks like one of the challenges though with that is even if there were a 2 or 3 family, the rental cost is still gonna be way above what affordable housing would take.
Right, it may not qualify for the state's formal definition of affordable housing without a deed restriction. I think that's actually very difficult to do in a town
Yeah.
like this. And even if you could, I don't know, find some bag of money somewhere and you built it with the funding.
Right.
It would be hard for someone with a limited income to make that work.
Yeah.
Because you're at a great distance to everything, to a job, to all the places you have to go, the supermarket and all the other places you generally need to go to, and you have to have a car. That's a huge expense. So part of that is very difficult to do that in Woodstock anyway. But if you allowed for options, more people may be able to find something that would work for them, even if it doesn't work for the state's formal definition.
Just looking at what we went through for the rentals on this exercise, I mean, it looks like $1,500 to $2,000 a month is kind of a range of rentals, which is obviously pretty steep, but just trying to do some quick numbers, and a person making $15 an hour at 30% of their gross income would be like a $775 a month rental, and even that's overstated. So it's almost up to somebody making $38 an hour, $80,000 a year to be able to afford a $2,000 a month kind of rent. So 2-family household, 2 workers can have a household income approaching that hourly. But my point is that a 2 or 3 family housing unit in Woodstock, I think would still command that kind of rental. 1,500, 2,000.
It may, but if with the standards that you have now and your current zoning standards, and I'm sorry, I failed to put this in the presentation. But your current standards are one moment, please. You have to start with 10 acres, so that's gonna be an expense because
Yeah.
it's a large lot. And then when you have so much of that lot you are not allowed to build on because you have these big setbacks. Your setbacks include a 200-foot setback for the front, like the front setback, whereas a single family home is only have to be 50 feet. And then your side setback is 75 feet, except that one that I mentioned that doesn't make any sense. 200 feet from between your multifamily house and your property and the one in the neighboring property. Except that neighboring house only has to be 20 feet away. So then you'd have to be 180 feet, except it already said your setback was only 75 feet. Does that make any sense? I don't think it makes any sense. And then you have a minimum distance between the multifamily structures on the property of 100 feet. So you take your 10 acres and you put in all your setbacks, and then your separation distances of 100 feet apart, you're not gonna be able to fit very many units on that lot. And you also have a maximum of 4 units per structure. So if you add all the expense of the 10 acres and then the design of the site plan and the engineers and the surveyors and your application Cause that's all gonna factor into the cost of building the thing. And then you try to figure out what would you rent each unit for? You're gonna be awfully high because you're starting with, but perhaps it could be somewhat less if we didn't start with 10 acres and you didn't have huge setbacks. Cause we do already have many of these other, we have 44 different units in 2 families, so that's 22 properties with 2 families. I bet they're not on 10 acres with enormous setbacks. And we have 4 3-family, you have 4 properties with 3 families, so 12 units total, and 9 condominiums. And 7 4-family. I bet they're not all on 10 acres with enormous setbacks. And I've worked here for 18 years and I haven't heard about problems on these properties. So I'm suggesting that without having the problems, and they're existing on lots that are, I haven't looked at all of them recently, but I did look it up when I did the affordable housing plan. I'm sure they are far less than the standards that you have right now in your multifamily. I'm suggesting that you consider allowing something that's similar to what you already have, since there's no problem. This is a Missing Middle Housing. It's a very interesting book that came out in the last couple of years. And I'm not suggesting that all these housing types work for Woodstock, but right now, most of what you have is a detached single-family home. But as we showed in that chart, you do have some single-family homes, some 3-family homes, and some 4-plex. I'm thinking maybe the senior housing might be considered a courtyard. And you do have some condominiums, which might be considered the townhouse. So I'm suggesting some of the ones in the circle, the things you already have, that's what you might consider allowing as the new structures. And so here's where, if talking about them, you might create some opportunities if these were allowed. And for a while there, a few years ago, we were talking about agriculture housing, but we never really got very far with that. So what do you think? How can the housing types mentioned above benefit Woodstock? Or if you don't think it would benefit, how do you think it would hurt Woodstock? Let's hear what you think.
Can you scroll back? There's the previous screen.
The screen or one of the other ones?
No, that one, just so that we know the questions. That'll be fresh. We already allow accessory apartments, right?
Yes. So we could check that off. We already allow that.
Three, four. Yeah.
While you're thinking about that, I just wanted to mention the manufactured mobile homes and the tiny homes. They would be single family homes. I don't see how the regulations right now would prohibit them. There might be an obstacle if there's a deed restriction, say in a subdivision or in a lake association, they may not allow them, but I don't believe zoning would prohibit them. And the town does not enforce deed restrictions. You can only enforce zoning regulations. But you could have, for instance, requires a special permit for condominiums, but right now our regulations don't have anything that would allow condominiums, even the ones that you already have. Because that 10 acre with all those setbacks and stuff, that wouldn't allow for those structures. Many of them have more than 4 units that are attached. And I don't believe they're meet those setbacks.
So right now, I own a lot, I can put a manufactured mobile home on that.
I don't see why not. I mean, you have
We
to,
haven't seen them,
well, they think they're considered a trailer and the trailer ordinance doesn't, I don't think the trailer ordinance allows them other than when you're having it temporarily while you're building your house, or if your house had some, like a fire or something, you're rebuilding it. But there's a limit. You can get a permit for 1 year and then you can get an extension of 1 year. But I don't believe that, the trailer ordinance is very confusing, in my opinion. But it seems to include mobile homes, even though it also includes RVs that you drive around or you attach to your vehicle to drive around.
Because you can say the trailer, if that's more like a camper trailer, then yes, your wheels stay on that and everything. A lot of these manufactured mobile homes, yes, they're on wheels that come in. And then they're set on blocks, basically. A lot of times.
And they're not intended to be driven around, although you probably could relocate them and take them off the
So
property.
there's no regulations in stock right now.
It's a trailer ordinance. That's kind of
Not
getting in the way of it, but not in zoning.
So what's the definition of a manufactured mobile home?
I could. you
Is that
wanted
one
to-
that's on wheels that you wheel in and then set up on blocks, or is
I
that?
could, if the internet would cooperate, I could look up what the state statutes say that it is. But we have an ordinance right now that's a trailer ordinance and it's a little confusing, but I think it mentions enough language that would describe a mobile home like the kind someone might live in.
Modular. That's not a mobile.
Chapter 412 of the Connecticut General Assembly says mobile manufactured home space or lot.
There's some category or trend of homes built inside like a large factory somewhere, and transported on site.
It's a lot of it.
Yeah, those are modular homes, right?
So that's full modular, and they're allowed.
But I
They-
mean,
Right.
they-
see, like in Thompson, there's a couple of, again, it's manufactured mobile home, but they're trailer parks. And I can't think of. I don't think there's.
Woodstock doesn't have any, but quite a few other towns do.
A mobile manufactured home is a single family house constructed entirely in a controlled factory environment. That's the federal manufactured home.
And that definition comes from where?
Yeah.
Well, there is a definition in the state statute.
Yeah.
I'm afraid if I exit the presentation, I'll never get it back again, so I wasn't gonna mess with it.
Oh, chapter 412, Connecticut General Assembly. Keep going.
So the section of that with definitions says a detached residential unit having three-dimensional components which are strictly mobile or without a wheel chassis or detached residential unit. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like with wheels, without wheels. And there's a date apparently where they changed, like in the 70s, where mobile homes and manufactured homes are the same thing, but the name.
It's very confusing. But the selectmen, I think, are considering revising the trailer ordinance. So I guess we'll have to wait to see what they do with it. But I don't believe zoning says anything about it. Maybe it doesn't because they always thought it was regulated by the trailer ordinance.
What is co-housing?
Co-housing is, I don't have a definition of it, but I've visited a few of them before, and it's on one property. And they can be single family, or they can be duplexes or threeplexes on the same property, and people own them and live in them. But you share share the property, kind of like a condominium, so you can have a common building. And in the ones I've visited, they were designed to be more environmentally friendly. So there was one side where you parked like in a parking lot, and then you walked to your house, and there was a pathway. You could probably have things delivered if you had to. On the other side, you could drive up to your house. So if someone couldn't walk that far, they could park at their house. But the idea was it would be more environmentally friendly, and then they would use less space because the houses would be a little bit closer together. And you'd have a big community building where you could probably have dinners together or something like that.
So that application on Crystal Pond. Did we eventually approve that?
The
Yes.
2-family with the accessory apartment, yes.
Yeah. Do you know if that has been built yet?
I don't do zoning permits anymore, so I don't know.
Just been curious what it looks like. It's kind of helpful to have a visual of some of these things, because,
He did provide visuals in his application. If you-
yeah, just wonder how it kind of looks
Exactly.
now, it was built. Oh, I kind of think the towns. Just talking on, it might make sense to first try to go and address 2-family. And if that's successful, then 3-family. If that's successful, kind of keep going down that path. From what I've heard, good part of East Woodstock, Dave, you probably know, is, split up into apartments in the 60s and 70s. Originally single-family homes, then split up, and now most of them are back to single-family homes. Without any physical alteration, again, just from what I heard, no exterior alterations. So, and I happen to live in one of those now. So my house looked the way it does now, and when it was in that apartment phase, and when it was a single home before that.
Yeah, we had an apartment.
Yeah. So, and I know we can't regulate appearance or layout or architecture or any of that. And I don't think guidelines are the way to go either. I don't think they'd be very popular. But I kind of think the public's concern is, well, how are these things gonna look? And if you go out 197, the Eisenhower Estates development duplexes, I don't know what people think about those. It seems to be kind of cookie cutter to me, but I think if the building looks nice and fits into the landscape and, all this like visual stuff, I think, and it's got to have a functioning septic system, the water source has to be good. And you probably have to deal with stormwater as well. So those 3 water-based systems all have to function definitely on that property. But if it looks nice and it functions, I think people would be okay with it. But to get there, I think is very, very difficult, if not impossible, the appearance. Because everybody's got a different opinion about how a house should look or how a duplex should look.
Well, like I said, you can't regulate appearance.
Right. But I think that's a major hurdle for the public. If we start looking at allowing duplexes or triplexes or anything beyond or different from a single family.
Well, I just, I mean, there's a fair number of duplexes in town that were built that are fine. I just don't think that we should allow them. I mean, it's just that we should try to change our regulations to allow them. See, public hearings and see what people think, but if we want to have more accessible housing, not necessarily affordable by the state standards, we need to make it easier for people to do that. People can build younger people can build a duplex and have the rent help pay for the house. And then, once you get past that, they can sell that and somebody else can buy it and do,
Right.
get their basis.
Kind of started.
It's a good way to start.
Yeah.
And then if you're older and want to downsize, then you can also move down into it. Maybe the duplex would be smaller, but then you also you'd have a neighbor, or you could rent it to a family member, so you'd have support.
Right.
So I just think it would be a good fit
I agree.
if we want, our children to be able to move back into town.
And I was kind of hoping the accessory apartments would be a good option for, young couples starting out. They could rent out one, the primary section or the secondary section, or for the older couple that wants to have kids with their grandchildren move into the main house and they can slide on over to the accessory. We've only had it on the books for a couple of years now, 2 years maybe. I don't know how many applications we've gotten. So I don't know if the market is demanding these things or whether we shouldn't care about the market. Let's just make the regulations allow them and the market will build them or they won't build them. And
I'm not sure how the records were kept because I always had that information available when I was the zoning officer, but I haven't been for a long time, but I can see if they can research that.
Is this for a district? A new district might be something for discussion for multifamily housing, the district area,
You could do that.
kind of. help
Or you could do it
start
by special
small.
permit, just have you could change what you have for multifamily now. And you can change the standards, like if you, like right now, two duplex is considered multifamily. In other towns, that doesn't start until 3 family. Like sometimes you have a standard for a duplex and it's not the same, it gets larger or whatever when you go above 2 family. So you could do it something like that. Or you could, maybe you could consider duplex with a zoning permit. Or, you could do special permit. But I think right now your multifamily standards are so excessive that's why we have only seen one of them. But, maybe if you wanted to consider that duplexes you think are a good fit, if that's your conclusion, maybe you allow them with a zoning permit, and maybe you would allow something more than that with a special permit, but change the standards, because nothing's gonna happen with the standards that you have now.
These, when it says 3 family and 4 family, are these actually like houses that are joined together? So you're not, these options don't include an apartment building, even a small one.
Well, 3 family the owner could live in one of them and then rent out 2 of the units, and they would be apartments.
Or you could just have apartments, right?
Right, you could have, the person who owns them doesn't have to live there, and they would rent out 3 units and a 3
But you're
family.
still talking about these being as the equivalent of houses as opposed to like a multi-story.
Well, 3 family is usually one structure, and inside of it, in whatever configuration you want, would have 3 units. Sometimes they're stacked, although we have a height limitation.
Right, I know something.
In Woodstock, it probably would not be 3 high, but it could be 3 next to each other, or maybe 2 on the bottom and 1 on the top, or something like that.
So now in relation to forming the POCD, we can take this information and say, is this something that we need to look at? We aren't making these regulations to go into the POCD. We're making recommendations for what we should be doing in the POCD.
So in the POCD, you can make recommendations for how you would change the zoning regs, and at that stage, you don't have to write the regulations, but for example, and I'm not telling you what to say, but you could say, would recommend that duplexes be allowed by a zoning permit. And then, obviously, at some point, zoning regulations and standards that apply to duplexes would have to be written. But during the POCD, you don't have to get into the weeds like that. You could also make a recommendation if you think the current multifamily regulations should be revised, then you could make recommendations in what way. To just say they should be revised doesn't give you a lot of detail, but you could make recommendations in what ways you think they should be revised.
Okay, so we could say that in the POCD, that we should maybe allow duplexes by permit and work on moving towards that, and look at considering changing our multifamily regulations that sound like they might not even be legal.
Well, there is something in there that's definitely not legal. They require open space, which the statute allows you to require open space in a subdivision. It doesn't give you any authority to require open space when it's not a subdivision, because multifamily, being that it's one property, is not a subdivision. So you have no authority to have that in there, but it's in there anyway.
Okay. So I'm just trying to maybe come up with some guidelines for the POCD. If we say, look at allowing duplexes by permit and reconsidering our multifamily regulations to make them more reasonable and lawful. I mean, does that sound like a good? I'm just kind of throwing this out there. What do people think of that?
Put in lawful.
Well, I know, but I mean, just kind of-
That's right, no, I know what you're.
When you say more reasonable, I think you'd want to flesh that out a little more. In what way?
Well, maybe adjusting the boundary lot
You mean the setbacks?
setbacks.
What about the lot size and the,
Well, I mean, that would be kind of, that would go along with the limitations that we have on multifamily, because we consider the limitations that we have on
Okay.
multifamily, like lot size. You know, lot size setbacks. Open space, all those things.
And regards that too, I keep coming back to our infrastructure and our sewer line. And we don't need those huge lots along the sewer line, providing the folks in the Water Pollution Control Authority come to their senses and realize that people should be hooked up.
Well, we're limited on that, not that I know that much about it, but, on what Putnam will allow us to ship.
We don't have our own processing.
We don't have our own
facility.
processing, so we're limited by what Putnam will take.
So
Say that again?
We're limited by what
you have a
Putnam will
contract
allow
with
us.
Putnam.
Contract with Putnam, and that Putnam has
Well,
a,
that should be worked out.
So I don't know how close you are to the maximum of what your contract allows. I don't
I
know the
don't
detail of
either.
that.
right,
But
And
you could make,
whatever it takes,
but the P O C D could make a recommendation about that if that's what you wanted.
okay, well then, we should have the WPCA and can we make a note, talk with WPCA, see if they have any
Sure.
recommendations for that?
but shouldn't you also be talking with Putnam? I mean, to see what they're willing to do and if there's a possibility of getting, I don't know, more state aid or something.
Right, that's, I mean, that's a great idea, but that's not our realm of authority, that's the WPCA, so that's their job. I believe. I don't think it's
I-
planning and zoning.
I think it
issue.
would be WPCA would have to talk to them,
Yeah,
but
that's not the planning and zoning
Channel.
I have tried to talk to the Putnam WPCA when I was writing the housing plan. And they wouldn't even talk to me. Cause I was writing about the sewer in the affordable housing plan and I called them and they wouldn't even speak to me.
Putnam or WPCA?
Putnam,
so I mean, that's where we have to get, that, the Woodstock,
I understand that.
that's not within our realm. I mean, we're kind of in charge of the P O C D, but that's their focus.
right, but
Their
we
job.
could recommend
We could
Yeah.
recommend that.
that they talk to them seriously about this issue.
I would invite them to a meeting.
Because to me, if you're gonna put in condominiums or, you know, multifamily housing, the best place to put it is along the sewer line.
Only if there's a place for the sewer to go to.
I think there are some
Or-
vacant lots. in the
Or
sewer
put an
district.
extension on the existing sewer.
No, but what I'm saying is, we can put the condo on the sewer line, but if Putnam is only accepting so much. It didn't do any good to dump more into it.
Yeah, well, I
Gotta
think
back
we're
up.
discussing something we don't know. We don't know how much capacity Putnam has. That would be up to the WPCA to look into.
And from the discussions that I've had with them, and my cousin was, Stuart Morse was chair of the WPCA for a long time. They're kind of on a pretty strict short leash on what they can do.
WPCA.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think the Putnam sewer plant went through some significant expansions and upgrades within the last decade or so.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought they were pretty close to being.
Transportation through there. You know, is it an 8-inch line? They may say, well, you can only put so much through that. If you
Right.
wanted, yeah, we got more capacity, but you're putting in a big.
Right.
You know, so that's, you're talking a serious infrastructure change. And it just may not, the sky isn't the limit, but that line exists, that line will have a certain capacity. So that may be a lot of their.
I'll bet you there's a lot of federal money out there that can be used to upgrade.
I'm sure.
upgrade the plant itself.
They've got the fair hooked in, don't they? Yes. That's gonna be probably a, you know, something that, they can't have, all the houses on it, all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of people living with them for a weekend fair, and then the fair dumps too, you know, there's gotta be some sort of a, you know, 10-year storm thing, or, you know, depending on that capacity. It's a lot of factors that must go into all of them.
Well, we can make recommendations, but we can get the WPCA to try to get some input from them. And recommend and ask, you know, if we can do that, or we can make recommendations, all the recommendations we want, but the WPCA, that's their realm, and
I understand that.
Duplexes and all that. The affordability for the young population. Individual 21 years old in college. Real with confidence that we'll look at the affordable housing. And if we may have to, you know, may have to do for that, but you can fill over two, but if you want, it becomes deep. You know, so look, just go, and that costs money, and somewhere along the line, somebody's gonna pay the piper. And it's hard for young families to get going with it.
And the trailer park. A lot. Over 55,
Sure.
so talking to the elderly.
Yeah.
We're talking both the elderly, but well,
But you'll see them in the paper once in a while, $68,000 for a trailer, trailer park. And it's pretty affordable for the young couple to get.
David, didn't you see one in your task tonight? But you said it was a lot more than that, didn't you?
it's a condominium.
Oh, I thought you were looking
Oh,
You
no,
know, they're gonna look at all.
condominium.
You have several.
but then with the trailer park, it's lot size.
Sure. You know, there's a lot to go with it, you certainly can't be putting it in an area where, you know, you can't supply the amenities that are necessary to take care of them.
Right.
Well, the house is right out on the river, so it's just easy to do everything.
But to have. Put in a trailer park. So they do have smaller lots in those, which, so you may have to change. You know, it's a different standard for lot size here, you don't want. If put in a trailer park and everyone is on a 2-acre lot. And it's all of a sudden making a really good.
And
So-
that
An elderly doesn't need 2
right,
acres.
it all goes back around affordability. You know.
So my question was, how do you think would these benefit Woodstock or hurt Woodstock?
Well, I think, personally, I think it would help in that maybe our school population would stop going down.
So which ones do you think would help? All of them or just some of them?
I think they all should.
All of us.
Right, because if you increase the supply, then if older people say move into a smaller unit, then there'll be a bigger house available. if they
Right.
moved out, so increasing the supply can only help everybody, really.
But it has to be a broad spectrum of supply. You know, you speak of the couple that you had. Affording a condominium in, you know, down near Cornfield Point. Most likely not. Buy a trailer park to survive, next to the income, but, so we address for affordable housing, but there are couples that thought, well, and can afford a condominium. Somebody's mowing their lawn, somebody's plowing their snow. Life is good, you know, so I think it can't be just 3-family houses, that's what we should authorize. That's all, that's to take care of all of our problems. I don't think so. we have to look at all the regulations to fit in every piece of the pie. We have to look at everybody. And, yeah, it's centered on them.
I don't think we're gonna solve the problem. I think it's kind of easy.
Right, exactly.
You know,
But
we're not gonna.
I think solving just one facet of it, I think we have to look at all of that. And make those opportunities available.
Something I think is a good point is if you allow the options, then someone, a private person could go and build them and it doesn't cost government money. Like the town doesn't have to pay for the duplex to be built. But in order to have more of the affordable housing that counts for the state, that's probably gonna, it's either gonna be deed restricted in a subdivision. And I don't see how that's gonna happen when your subdivisions are so small. We don't have the huge subdivisions where if you had a 10% requirement, if you had 20 houses with 10% requirement, 2 houses. When was the last time we had a subdivision that was more than 3 lots? What is the 10% of the 3 lots?
Yeah, well,
So-
those regulations were not built, were not made for
Well, the
Eastern Connecticut.
affordable housing regulations are in Woodstock's regulations are a ridiculous joke. If you want me to be honest.
Well,
but-
I mean, we just,
Yeah, that other concept doesn't work out here, but it also, we don't have bigger subdivisions anymore, so I don't know that you would ever even have one of those units built, because even if you had a small percentage requirement, we have very small subdivisions these days,
I know.
so you're not gonna yield a lot out of, if it's a 10% requirement or 20% requirement, when you only have 2 and 3 lot subdivisions.
But if there was something like Cornfield Point built, then that would remotely allow. that.
You could do something like that with different regulations than from what
Right.
you have now.
But that depends on whether they're affordable.
Well, that's
saying-
where a developer
He's saying
could
if there
come in
was
and
a
get state
requirement
funding.
for a percentage to be. affordable.
The initiation point versus Fawn Ridge. Yeah, it's the one on the
Fawn Ridge.
yeah, Fawn Ridge, where you've got boom, 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 boom. Well, those are gonna be a lot more affordable to a younger couple or an older couple than going down a point where you've got distance between the condos, you've got 2 together, and you've got 2 together over here, and you know, you're starting to get a little more elite.
And even, well, even the Fawn Ridge,
Yes, you would,
even that one, that was $240,000.
Sure.
1%. I mean, that's cheap for town, but that's not cheap.
but it's right. But I think we need to look at the regulations from everyone.
Less than the rent. But not much. Okay, so where are we now? on this?
What house types would be a good addition to Woodstock? Out of that list, if you think they're all, if you all would be, or,
Most of them. See?
so we already have accessory apartments, that's already a check mark. And we've heard about duplexes. Do you think any of the other ones would be a good fit? Heard some discussion of condominiums.
Well,
The
in
manufactured
3 and
mobile
4
homes.
family, it's what we're talking, those are basically gonna be apartment houses. And so. And that's where, if there's a need, and so you're gonna assume that an apartment is more affordable than buying a single family house. So, you know, having a 4-family apartment would be helping.
But that's all I had for the presentation. If there's anything else you want to talk about for housing? It's not the end of the meeting, but, that's all I had for presentation.
Look in the other towns, Eastford, Pomfret, anywhere in the area that have kind of gone through the same process as us to.
Eastford
Considering-
is a unique place because they don't have zoning. They do have someone who's doing a lot of building that's. I'm not sure if I think there might be condos, because there are many units on one property without doing a subdivision. And only regulation they have wetlands, of course. But because they don't have zoning, if you're not doing a subdivision, you don't really have any review. So he's building lots of units on one property, and they are selling, but I've heard that there are a lot of quality complaints, and some of the people who are buying the units have sued him for, I don't know what the outcome of the lawsuit
How are
was.
they dealing with water and septic if there's just one, if there's multi-unit?
I haven't reviewed them because I don't work in Eastford, but my coworker's the planner, and I have to ask him. There's, some of them are pretty close together. They probably have a community septic, but I don't remember specifically.
Oh, okay, so they can have a community septic.
They have to have something, but, and I've seen them because he brought me over there to show it to me. Because I wanted to hear how some of these buildings are quite close together. But, and he has a whole development right now where everything's one bedroom. They're one bedroom, small houses that are fairly close together. And they don't look bad, but I've heard a lot of quality complaints, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's an issue with just that particular developer who's done a lot of work in that town, and there's a lot of unhappy people.
Where is it located? You know?
I'm not sure.
It's on the corner of Eastford Road and Ashford Road.
Oh,
Going back to the manufactured mobile homes, if you took the darn word mobile out of there, it would make a lot more sense. Take
I
the
know.
word mobile out of that.
Well, but then you.
I think you
but
have to-
That's your,
State definition,
right, because then your manufactured homes are your
modular.
modules.
Prefabs.
Yeah, and so there's a big difference between the modular home and the manufactured mobile home.
I agree that I think the word makes it seem like something that it isn't. Cause you don't drive them
Yeah, because
around.
Yeah,
they,
they drive it to the site and put it on a permanent foundation. That doesn't make it a mobile home.
Well, but a manufactured mobile home doesn't go onto a foundation.
No, they go on
It's just sitting on a slab.
Fixed in place, but not on a foundation.
yeah, not a foundation, might even have a slab.
It's just go on there. You can hook up and tow it
You
away.
usually just
Sitting
put
out
like a
here.
skirt or something around the outside so you don't see what's underneath the building.
All right.
Okay.
They're on a framework.
I mean,
They're
it's,
doing a
you know,
special
like we were talking about the trailer parks. You know, what's in the trailer parks, not a campground.
Yeah, well, a trailer park usually has a space underneath.
Yeah.
So
So what do you suppose that space is?
the axles are still on.
That's right. So
That's
that's a
what they're
manufactured
talking
mobile home.
It's a manufactured mobile home. The
They
axles
just
stay on.
disguise
That's a
it by,
manufactured mobile home.
they put
The
something
axle
in
has to stay
and
on.
see that.
Well, it doesn't have to stay on.
Usually take the
Hook
tires
yours up
off so you don't walk.
Well,
But if it's positioned on a permanent foundation,
Well, no, not
But it's not
necessarily.
a foundation.
It might be just on piers, might just be on a slab. It's,
I don't know.
I don't
So-
like the terminology.
I agree. I think it's confusing and I think it makes it seem like something that it isn't, but I think maybe that will be somewhat cleared up when the town does something with their trailer ordinance, if they end up doing something with it. But I think you would have to go with what the state defines them as, because if you call them something else, then that probably wouldn't be recognized as whatever the new word is that you're calling it.
right, is that what the state calls them now?
Yes.
But, and does the town use that definition as well? Because it sounds like it doesn't.
Their trail ordinance that mentions it is from the 70s. And then that part was rescinded, and then they have all these other parts that are tacked on, but the new parts don't have definitions, so I think that people would rely on the old definitions, even though it says they were no longer valid. So it's very confusing.
But the Board of Selectmen are tackling that perfectly. They know it's confusing, they're working on updating it, so it's not like it's being.
Right. So if you wanted to, maybe you could communicate if the commission wanted to make a statement to the selectmen, if they felt a certain way about it, so they would know what your input is in regards to trailers, trailer, mobile, manufactured mobile home.
Guess that makes- I will do that. Is there anything else under this POCD update?
Not for today, for next week, which I haven't done that presentation yet. But next week, we're gonna be looking at the state POCD. And you guys will, I'll send you links to it and you'll be able to review it. And then if you wanted to make any statements to the state, or we'll have to get our comments into them. Okay.
So now we can move on to new business, which is our 2025 schedule. Which I guess we have to vote on and approve before we go home.
I don't,
Move to approve.
I don't have a
Second.
copy of it, but does it have the first meeting in January
Yeah,
of
January.
2025?
January 2nd.
January 2nd.
which will probably cancel.
We'll probably cancel
at December meeting.
because that's usually the planning meeting.
So normally what we would do with the schedule, because I didn't write it, Cameron didn't, I don't think he knew. We would usually include the January of the next year, so January of 2026. Because it gives you a buffer in case you don't get your calendar in on time in next December. Like not next month, but next year.
Oh, okay.
So if you're gonna have, if you want to do the first, January 1st of 2026 is a Thursday, so I don't know if you'd want to then
do this.
list it as January 8th. And then if you decided not to have it, that December of 2025, you could always cancel the January meeting.
So we don't wanna miss that
Okay, so-
meeting,
So what?
you don't wanna miss the.
Right, because, next December, you would list for the next year and you would make sure you cover that.
So in December, we can decide if we're gonna have the January 2nd meeting or if we're gonna move it. But for now, that we can leave it here. So it's on the schedule.
And do we want to amend it?
Yeah, so I can have a
in
motion to amend
January?
it, like January 8th.
And January
2026?
15 maybe? But
Do we need
Then
the both meetings in January or just the first?
Usually just the first one with the buffer, because if you got your schedule in too late next December, that would give you a little bit of time to fix your problem, because this.
So then
Your schedule.
yeah, right. Well,
Do I
we'll
have-
know the schedule will be December.
So we had a motion to approve on the floor by Sid.
I'd like to amend that.
So
All right,
it wasn't seconded yet. So can we second it before we amend it?
second.
Okay,
I'd like to amend that.
so we're gonna add a friendly amendment, I believe, to that as this beginning. You think I'm doing this schedule?
Friendly amendment.
If the-
To add the January 8th, 2026, is that all right with you, Sid? Fine. That's all right with you?
That's a fine. with me.
Okay, any more discussion? Got it.
Juneteenth and all town hall closed, so we can't have a date scheduled there. June 19th,
Oh,
let's, federal holiday, so we can't have that meeting. Either have to eliminate it or.
well, let's move it to the June 26th. I think that's would be the following Thursday.
26th would be the,
June what?
June 26th.
change the 18th to 26th.
Is that amendment all right with everybody? Okay. Everybody's all right with this?
Yep.
Can we have, let's see, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? There. That's done. Any citizens' comments? We bored them all to death with that.
Adjourn.
There we go. That's what we're looking for. All in favor?
Thank you, Jeff. Or I was listening, but I'll leave it on for.
Still there, I guess he's listening.
Well, what your, and it's what it's sure. Like one. I don't need that. Hold on. Huh? Yeah. If you wanna like it.
Oh, yeah.
It's sick, I don't want.
It shows. Buildings up and moving after they've already been put down on a.
The Connecticut state staff.
You have to stay on.
Sometimes you place for the new one if they sell it.
Do you want the table back the way they were? Or is this gonna cause agita with the town hall staff?
We probably would put them back because I wouldn't want them to get mad at me. If you could help, that would be great.
I9.
Well.